I'm just going to wing it. Going freestyle. This, huh? Oh, that's going. Okay, cool. Hey, welcome to the Fireside Tattoo Podcast. My name is Jake. This is the Fireside Tattoo Podcast. Smooth. Do you see how I did that? Hey, go to Fireside Tattoo and keep up with where we're going to be. We have a busy spring coming up. I won't run through all of it because I did that last week, but and you might be watching this next year for all I know. That's the stuff I don't take into account. So just go to Fireside Tattoo and see what we're going to be up to. Maybe we'll be in your town, working a convention. You could get tattooed. You could be on the show. Any number of things. Also sign up for our mailing list. I was going to ask, Scott, is there a place to sign up for our mailing list on the new website or no? Okay. Yeah. There's not a place right now. Oh, well. So I want to do a kind of hopefully a short episode today. I don't want to run on too long. Sometimes these solo episodes go a little longer than I want them to. But we just put out a technique episode, and I thought it might need more explanation or just expanding on the idea in the technique episode. But so pretend for a second that we're not tattooers. Let's just say that we're painters, or we just sit on park benches and sketch in our sketchbooks, and we don't have any kind of real rigid process, and the work that we put out isn't just super permanent, and there are no real consequences to us making like free marks that aren't just right. And let's try for a second to think about approaching a tattoo in that way, with that kind of like kind of careless. Well, careless isn't a good way to put it. Carefree. Yeah. Just be more careless in your tattoos. Thanks. Have a good night. But so this is kind of how the best tattooers feel, I think. When the people that you look up to that are doing really unique things, that you really recognize their style, and you recognize instantly when you flip through your Instagram what they're doing, like, oh, that's so-and-so's work. That's how they feel when they sit down to approach a tattoo. They don't feel too married to that restrictive process that we have been taught since we started tattooing. And we put out a technique episode earlier this week that was called something like, "Why would anyone line with a shader?" or "Why would you line with a mag?" And it wasn't necessarily, we try our best not to give away a lot of really technical, like tattoo-y technical information on this show. We try to make it more drawing focused. And that technique episode is drawing focused, but it does kind of incorporate some technique, because in that tattoo, I line a back piece with a 5 mag. And it's real sketchy, and it's loose, and it's painterly. And the point of it wasn't to encourage people to line with a mag. It was to encourage people to explore the kind of unique types of marks that tattoo machines and different needle configurations are capable of making, and then learning to use those marks to express yourself to your advantage. Instead of feeling like you have to get all of your lines in just perfectly and built up to the perfect line weight, and then get all of your shading just right, and your darks to your lights, and all the blends have to be smooth and settled in, and then you come to color, and then when you finish color, that's it. You're done. You don't get to go back and do anything else because the lining was at the first of the tattoo. And that's how we were all taught, and it's a very restrictive way to think. Now, that said, I ran into someone at an event recently who is just finishing up an apprenticeship, and she told me, I don't care what Fireside said, or she said her mentor told her, I don't care what Fireside says or what Jake does, you are doing it this way. So let me back up a little bit and say, if you're still in an apprenticeship, if you're early on in your tattoo career, less than 3 years, I would say, and you're still reporting to someone that's helping you get better on a daily basis, ignore me and listen to them. They're watching you. They're over your shoulder, and they know what you're doing. They know what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are, and they have a better idea of where you stand and what you should and shouldn't be doing. That rigid process that we've used for so many years to learn to put ink into skin, it does serve a purpose. I mean, there's a good reason for it, because it's been tried and true, and it's been tried and proven to work. I guess in this episode, I'm thinking more about people that are feeling a little more stagnant, people that are have already kind of learned to put in solid tattoos. Their tattoos heal well, and they're so married to their process of tattooing that they really never grow, they never explore or expand or get any better. And I first started thinking about this when we uh, when when I started following our Find Your Style graduates. Can we call them graduates? People that have gone through our courses, either Find Your Style or Foundations. Uh, Foundations course, is one that you kind of go through at your own pace. It's a video module and an assignment, a video module and assignment, and it's a drawing course focused around tattooing. And then Find Your Style is more of a one-on-one higher end course where I give you an assignment, you complete it, you turn it into me, and I critique it. I draw directly on top of your drawing and then send it back and say, these are the changes that I made and this is why. And so everyone that goes through that course, for the most part, we go through and we follow them on their Instagram just to kind of keep up with their progress. And I won't call out any names because I don't know who particularly, but I do notice from time to time that I'm flipping through and I know these people have solved some real drawing problems. I've watched them progress. I've watched them work with charcoal, and I've watched them find their own kind of voice in drawing and they're doing some unique things. And I can look at their sketches and say, oh yeah, so and so did that or that. They really solved a big problem there. And then I see them put their tattoos out, and I'm like, they're not doing any of that. They're not using any of it. Like all of it went out the window when they went back to tattooing. Not all of them, but some people I notice. And so, and for a while it frustrated me, and it made me think I'm not a very good teacher. I'm not doing a good job at getting the point across because they're not executing the all the things that we learned in Foundations or in Find Your Style. And then the more I thought about it, the more I realized it's because they've been taught to tattoo in this very specific way. And whenever we were working in charcoal and we set up a skull and we lit it from whatever angle, and there wasn't a real specific way they had to work, and they were able to experiment and they became better problem solvers. And then when it came back to tattooing, they didn't translate that way that they were drawing to tattooing because they went back and started lining again. And then they went back and they started pulling their light grays to their dark grays. And then everything got really stagnant and kind of like tattooy again. And they lost a lot of that really nice kind of immediacy that they had in their drawings. And so I just think that sometimes we get so caught up in our method, in our process of tattooing, that we forget about the unique things that we do when we're not tattooing. The cool effects we get in paintings and in drawings and in our outside work that doesn't have all of that weight on it. Doesn't have the consequences of what happens whenever you fail. If you fail at a painting, it's not a big deal. You paint over it, you correct it, you throw it away and start a new one. If you fail in a tattoo, then everyone knows about it and you have an unhappy client. So I think that we get so caught up in what should work in a tattoo that we don't often pay attention to what actually does work for us. Another good example of that is last week someone came through the studio, someone that watches the show, tattoos out of state, was coming through Memphis and just emailed me and asked if they could sit in and watch a tattoo. And this person was still an apprentice. And as they came in, they were sitting watching the tattoo, and I'm working on it. And they made the comment that I wasn't making little circles whenever I was filling color. And they're like, how do you fill color without making the circles? I'm like, well, sometimes I make circles whenever it makes sense. And other times I make little hatchy marks and I whip this that way. I just kind of pay attention to what's working and what's not working. Well, I was told that you had to use little circles. And that's the mindset. Like, well, in tattooing, if you want solid color, you make little circles, right? You have to. But you don't have to. It's one of the ways to get in solid color. It's not the only way to get in solid color. Sometimes it's not an efficient way to get in solid color. Sometimes you beat the skin up more before you get it saturated working that way. And it makes more sense to find another way to make that mark that skin responds to. So how do you apply all of it? I guess the best thing to do, and I haven't come up with a perfect answer for this, but I guess the best thing to do if you find yourself stagnant in your tattooing, if you find that you're just using this same process that's always kind of worked, and you're hesitant to step outside of it, treat it like any other experiment and maybe just change a variable at a time. So I wouldn't try to change the way that I'm approaching my lining and the way that I'm approaching my shading. Or maybe if I am happy with the color saturation that I'm getting, I don't have a problem with that, but sometimes my lines end up kind of muted or funky at the end of the tattoo. Maybe I experiment with coming back to my lines at the end of a tattoo. And if I'm happy with my line work and not my shading, maybe I change the way that I'm making marks. Maybe instead of making little circles, I work on making kind of whipped effects, and pay attention to the skin the entire time. And I know that's kind of a tricky thing to teach or to talk about on a video or on YouTube, is how to pay attention to the skin. But it's vitally important to learn that when you're getting good saturation in the skin and when you are beating the skin up and it just gives the appearance that maybe it's saturated. So the best way to find out what's working and what's not, obviously, is to see your healed tattoos. So, you know, if you're going to change from making little circles to making whipped marks, and slowing your hand down or speeding your hand up or upping or down, speeding up or slowing down the power of your machine or any of those things, I would suggest trying one at a time, one variable at a time, make that change, finish that tattoo. When they walk out of the door, just schedule a follow-up time, even if it costs you time and money. Even if you block off an hour to do a touch-up and they come back in and it looks perfect, you don't need the touch-up. You lost an hour income, but you really didn't lose anything. You gained some insight. You got to see, oh wow, that's what skin looks like when it's going to heal well. Or that's what that skin, I knew that looked overworked, and now I've proven myself right because I can tell that color didn't stay in. Or that weird yellowy green that I thought wasn't in the skin actually healed a lot brighter than I thought it was going to. And you just add all those things to your bank of knowledge, and then you start to understand how skin reacts, what different pigments look like when you first put them in the skin. Sometimes they look splotchy and they heal fine, and you start to develop that bank of knowledge, and you go like, I know that looks a little crappy right now, but I know that's going to settle in just fine because I've seen this happen 3 or 4 times now. So try something new. Get out there, try to line it. Try to go back to your liner at the end of a tattoo. Don't worry about the process that you were taught. It doesn't have to be that way all the time, unless you're new and you're still reporting to a mentor and they say that I'm wrong, in which case I'm wrong. Do what they said. But if you're stagnant, if you've been tattooing for a while, trying to learn new things, change something. Change a variable at a time. Start making whip marks instead of little circles. Line at the end of the tattoo. Bled line at the first of the tattoo. Put all your color in. Line at the end of the tattoo. Don't use any gray wash. You use only black in your dark shading. Black to nothing, and then lay your color right over that and see what happens. Experiment with those different things, and don't get so caught up in what's supposed to work, because you'll often find that other things work, and what you thought was working well wasn't really working well at all. So that's it. If you have not seen that technique episode that I'm referring to here, we'll link to it in this video description. It's a full back piece that I went through, and I lined everything with a 5 mag, and I actually didn't use a liner until the very last sitting, which was probably, I don't know how many sittings in, probably 30 hours in before I ever pulled a liner out. And you can see how the tattoo settled in, and you can see what the liner did to really punch a few lines forward, and it gave a really unique effect in my opinion. If you are interested in foundations and find your style, go to firesidetattoo.com, click on courses. Foundations is available at any time. It is, I think, is it 6 or 8 core video modules that are is that right? 6, 8? 8? Okay, so maybe I forget. There are 6 or 8 core modules that teach the principles of drawing as it applies to tattooing, and then there are practical applications videos that take those concepts that we cover, those principles, and apply them in day-to-day whatever tattoos or in drawings. They're kind of like technique episodes, a little more thorough, a little more robust than traditional technique episodes. In fact, that back tattoo that is on the technique episode I'm referring to is a practical applications module. It's just a small little segment of it. So check out Foundations. We might link to that video that explains the course in here as well. So if you look at if you look in the video description, you'll find both the technique episode that I'm referring to and the Foundations video. You can check both of those out. That's it. Wanted to keep this one nice and short. I just wanted to explain that the ideas behind that video a little more thoroughly, because I feel like we might get some bad feedback with people saying, don't line with a shader, moron, dumbass. Thank you guys so much. Thank you guys so much for supporting what we do. I didn't even drink my beer. I'll drink it now. We'll see you guys next time. And don't forget, subscribe.